characters. I mean, look what they did with Christian in WWE now. He's doing virtually nothing. But in TNA Wrestling, he was the World Heavyweight Champion within a few months of his arrival. They revamped his character from just simply Christian to Christian Cage, and look how fast of a star he was. He was one of the rising stars in TNA Wrestling. By against all odds, in 2006, 2007, he was TNA Champion, and he was feuding with some of the top names in the company, including Abyss, in memorable matches for the TNA Championship. I mean, look what Jeff Jarrett did for talents like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, the kings of wrestling. I mean, the earlier years of TNA Wrestling were by far some of my favorite, and now in 2014 I can't stand to watch TNA Wrestling. They brought Lacey Von Erich in for the TNA Knockouts division, and how long did Lacey's run in TNA last? Only a few months before she was released from TNA Wrestling. It wouldn't put me past if Lacey Von Erich even requested her release without TNA Wrestling even making the decision to release her because of the position that she was in. She was brought in with so much hype. All she really needed was to improve on her wrestling ability, and fans were criticizing her for that. But I think Lacey Von Erich ultimately made the decision to leave TNA because she knew that her character was going nowhere very fast, and the beautiful people that were benefiting from Lacey being a part of that threesome were Angelina Love and Velvet Sky. I mean, Velvet Sky could easily get over as the TNA Knockouts champion, and it's beyond me why she isn't the TNA Knockouts champion. I don't know why everything has to revolve around Brooke Adams, Miss Tessmacher, in TNA Wrestling. A couple of months ago, I caught an edition of TNA Impact Wrestling, and everything seemed to be revolving around Brooke Tessmacher in the TNA Knockouts division, more so than some of the phenomenal talents that you had in the TNA Knockouts division. I think that TNA Wrestling is not going to get to a position that WWE is in right now and be able to provide direct competition for them in the next 5 or 6 years if they don't do something really fast. One of the biggest mistakes that they made was getting rid of Hulk Hogan, because he was doing an incredible job as the TNA general manager, and Dixie Carter all of a sudden now has an issue with Hulk Hogan and comes out and publicly fires Hulk Hogan on an edition of TNA Impact Wrestling, and now TNA Wrestling is going nowhere fast, and the only thing they have going for them right now of prominency is the probability of MVP becoming the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and if that happens, TNA Wrestling is going on a downward spiral and going nowhere very fast. I mean, MVP wasn't entertaining in WWE, and there's no way he's going to be able to be entertaining in TNA Wrestling, no matter who you put him in a feud with. TNA Wrestling just has too many new talents right now that make no sense to feud with MVP for the TNA Championship. If anyone should be TNA Champion, it should be Austin Aries. He's a phenomenal wrestler. If anyone should be TNA Champion, it should be someone like Kurt Angle. But that's not going to happen as long as we have people like Ken Anderson and MVP in TNA Wrestling, because fans know them from their days in WWE in the earlier years of their career. I mean, yes, MVP had his 15 minutes of fame in WWE. He was number 3 on the top sellers of merchandise in 2007-2008 when he was a part of the Tag Team Champions and feuding with MVP over the United States Championship. He may have been number 3 or 4 on the top sellers all-time list of merchandise, and he may never have gotten a chance to be WWE Champion, but those were his 15 minutes of fame, in my opinion. There's no way he's going to be the top seller of merchandise in TNA in 2014 with how many phenomenal talents that are unfortunately being put on the back burner because of what MVP is doing for TNA Wrestling, and for some reason Dixie Carter believes that MVP is going to get the TNA company over as TNA champion. It's absolutely ridiculous when you have so many phenomenal talents. I mean, Ken Anderson, I know he's been TNA champion before, but he should be TNA champion now with how phenomenal he is. He's a phenomenal performer, and when you compare MVP to Ken Kennedy or Ken Anderson, whoever you want to refer to him as, Ken Kennedy was a far better performer. I mean, at least he got a chance to feud with people like Batista and The Undertaker. I mean, MVP, the biggest name he feuded with in WWE was Kane in an Inferno match, and that was only a one-time deal. The match was won by Kane, but the thing is, it's absolutely terrible when you see just what WWE did with the characters and see what TNA are trying to do with the character, and it's just a repeat of history when you see people like Ken Anderson and MVP Antonio Banks suffering like they did years ago. If anything, it's just a repeat of history, and MVP is going nowhere fast, and there are countless names in TNA Wrestling that I can put in the same position that MVP is in right now. Over half the roster seem to be in the same position, with the exception of maybe 5 or 6 wrestlers who are carrying TNA Wrestling. And I really don't appreciate the idea, too, of how Dixie Carter and TNA Wrestling are trying to promote TNA Impact now as TNA Impact Wrestling, really shoving the idea of TNA Wrestling being a wrestling promotion in our faces. We get it. Every week on Spike TV, we don't need to be constantly reminded of how TNA Wrestling prides itself on the wrestlers and wrestling. I mean, we know that TNA Wrestling is a fucking wrestling promotion. That's what we're watching TNA Wrestling to see. But we don't need to be constantly reminded that they are wrestling, and they are supposed to be the #1 wrestling promotion in the world. Isn't WWE the #1 wrestling promotion in the world? At least WWE, I will give them the benefit of the doubt, have something creative going on from time to time. It may not be everything going on in WWE that's creative, with Daniel Bryan being champion and then all of a sudden now having to forfeit the championship and a new champion supposedly having to be crowned, and all the rumors of who the next champion is going to be. But whoever the next champion is going to be a far more better representative than what MVP is going to be for TNA Wrestling when it eventually happens. I mean, Slammiversary is looking absolutely terrible when all we have to look ahead to is MVP becoming the TNA Heavyweight Champion. Slammiversary is going to fucking suck and going to be the worst pay-per-view possibly of 2014, just like every other pay-per-view. Joker's Gone Wild 2 was a pay-per-view that I absolutely died laughing about because it was such a stupid name for the one night only series for TNA Wrestling. That's another fucking thing. Their stupid pay-per-view series, the one night only series. I mean, what happened to the original pay-per-views like Slammiversary and Lockdown? What happened to those original pay-per-views that fans love to watch in TNA Wrestling? What happened to the years when fans would refer to TNA Wrestling pay-per-views as some of the best shows that TNA would do every month? I mean, everybody used to look forward to the fucking TNA Wrestling pay-per-views. Now we go from pay-per-views that fans used to look forward to watching to this one-night-only series, which is going nowhere fast and going on a downward spiral. I mean, there's nothing to really look forward to in TNA Wrestling. Change is the best way of describing TNA Wrestling, and you need to put change in quotation marks, and that's going to be something I'm going to be using, a word I'm going to be using a lot in an upcoming column that I'll be writing on our website about the changes TNA Wrestling have gone under over the last 5 to 6 years. TNA Wrestling is a far different promotion than what it was 10 years ago, and I know it had a lot to do with the novelty of TNA Wrestling and them having to establish themselves. I mean, going from pay-per-view to primetime television is a big jump and big adjustment for TNA Wrestling to have to make. They made that adjustment very effectively because they brought that same kind of feel from pay-per-view you had to pay $10 for every week on pay-per-view to see to television. They had to bring that same kind of feel with them, and they very effectively did that. But the changes they have undergone over the past number of years are going to come back to haunt them if they aren't already being haunted by these changes that they have made. And again, it goes back to how Dixie Carter has been running TNA Wrestling. She's been running it very unprofessionally and very insufficiently, in my opinion, and that means that something has to be done. But the thing is, nothing will be done as long as Dixie Carter is running the show. Getting rid of Hulk Hogan was one thing, and now possibly putting MVP up as a possible candidate to be TNA World Heavyweight Champion. You did it with Ken Anderson. It was very effectively done. He got over in TNA Wrestling, and he got over more than what MVP is doing. The only thing going on with MVP right now is the fact that history seems to be repeating itself from the earlier years of his career in WWE. I mean, have we forgotten the fact that fans were chanting Power Rangers that year in 2005 when he made his debut in the fall? Fans were chanting Power Ranger, and they knew MVP was going to go nowhere in WWE. More fans hated MVP than jumped on the bandwagon of MVP, and all they tried to do with MVP backfired in their faces. The biggest thing they tried to do with MVP was turn him into a fan favorite, and that backfired on them just like everything else they tried to do with MVP. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the talent of Antonio Banks. He was a great wrestler down in the developmental camp with WWE. I mean, he was great in the developmental camp, you know, developing his skills and things, and when they were trying to come up with a gimmick for Antonio Banks to portray, I mean, he was a phenomenal talent. But the thing is, MVP is not someone who's going to get over a wrestling promotion. WWE, neither TNA as champion, no matter how high he is on the merchandise list for any promotion, he's never going to get over, because what it comes down to is who can generate the numbers in both WWE, TNA, and even Ring of Honor. I'll do you one better and go to an independent promotion on a higher level. Whoever can get the numbers is going to be on top, and going to be on top consistently. If it's Daniel Bryan in WWE, it's going to be Daniel Bryan. If it's Bray Wyatt, it's going to be Bray Wyatt. If it's Wade Barrett, it's going to be Wade Barrett. If it's John Cena or Randy Orton, it'll be one of those two. And the same thing applies, the same kind of logic from a wrestling promoter's perspective is going to apply. Obviously, Dixie Carter thinks the same kind of way Vince McMahon thinks, only a little bit differently as a wrestling promoter. All she cares about are the numbers. She's a wrestling promoter, and she's going to do what she has to do to get the numbers, and no matter who it is that gets the numbers, that's who should be TNA champion. Not fucking MVP, not Ken Anderson if they can't get the numbers. Obviously, Anderson got higher numbers than what MVP did. Obviously, AJ Styles got higher numbers than what MVP did, and there are numbers of TNA wrestlers who can get higher numbers than what MVP can get. And if you ask me what the biggest issues are now in TNA wrestling, it's obviously Dixie Carter, it's the fact Hulk Hogan is no longer affiliated with TNA wrestling, and it's the fact that the MVP is possibly going to be TNA World Heavyweight Champion and representing us on these pathetic pay-per-views like Joker's Gone Wild and these Slammiversary pay-per-views and these pathetic pay-per-views like Hardcore Justice. They're not getting over. The pay-per-view series sucks, and Slammiversary is going to suck just as much. This has got to be the worst build for a Slammiversary pay-per-view, especially a pay-per-view that's supposed to be an anniversary celebration of TNA wrestling. You would expect Slammiversary to be filled with action from top to bottom, especially with how it's supposed to emphasize on however many years TNA wrestling has been around. TNA wrestling has been around for over 10 years. They have done the 10th anniversary graphic for a while now on their television programs. They're going on 11 or 12 years they've been in business, and in their 11th or 12th year, to me, they are in a very precarious position, and it goes back to what people like Dixie Carter have been doing for wrestling. And this is why Jeff Jarrett has gone away from TNA wrestling, kind of drifted apart from TNA wrestling. He knows the direction of the company is not satisfactory to him or his father, so he's gone to start up his own wrestling promotion again for the second time. He's worked for every major wrestling promotion from WWE to WCW and created his own TNA wrestling and helped his father run TNA wrestling, and he did it very effectively because of the understanding he had for the wrestling business. And that's what Dixie Carter doesn't have going for her, is the fact that she doesn't understand how the wrestling business works and how to run a wrestling promotion. The thing about Jeff Jarrett is he had a lot of good friends in the wrestling business, and that's why we're going to see a lot of people leave TNA wrestling to go work for Jeff Jarrett. That's why we're going to see Scott Hall and Kevin Nash eventually working for Jeff Jarrett and his other wrestling promotion he has started up, because of the friendships that they have with Jeff Jarrett and have had for years. I mean, nobody has that kind of friendship with Dixie Carter. Yes, she has a few good friends in the wrestling business, but not enough to help her get over, and that's why Jeff Jarrett's promotion is going to rise above TNA wrestling. This is why Jeff Jarrett left TNA wrestling, because he knew his days of TNA champion and running TNA were coming to an end. TNA was going nowhere under the direction of Dixie Carter.